I told him I'd call 16. Figure this out.
Well, the Midblock didn't really work. That's good. My freshman year, I started reading the graduate students. Oh, I see. So then you had it. So I did it. I ended up that's how we did it.
Law school has, it's not the bachelor's scores and stuff. Bringing it forward.
Yeah.
You're reading grade 3 and you don't have anything to do. Like, it's something else they can say. Those that are looking for a way to make money.
Okay. Oh, my
So,
I got to the point where my teachers
It's like our worst
Something to in the morning. Not just roll out of bed.
Looks like we got a full house today, so let's get going. Everybody, let's stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. All right. Let's start off with roll call. Cathy?
Vice Chair Branconi.
Present.
Committee Member Cotter.
Present.
Committee Member Newman.
Present.
Committee Member Wyrick.
Present.
Chair Lobsinger.
Present.
Let the record show that Commissioners Brennan and Domeno are not in attendance. Thank you.
All right, move this closer. Next, we're going to have the approval of the agenda. Does any of the committee members have any changes to the agenda? If there are no changes, I'd like to ask for, is there any public comment on the agenda itself, not any of the specific items listed in it? Seeing no public comment, I'm going to, oh, here we go. Is this regarding the agenda for the meeting?
This is regarding no matter that is on tonight's agenda. This is open public comment.
This is for approval of the agenda.
Forgive me, I'm
Okay, that's okay.
misunderstood.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
All motion?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Vice Chair Branconi.
Aye.
Committee Member Cotter.
Aye.
Committee Member Domeno, oh, excuse me. Committee Member Newman.
Aye.
Committee Member Wyrick.
Aye.
Chair Lobsinger.
Aye.
And that passes 5-0-2. Thank you.
All right, next we're going to move on to general public comment. I'm going to read a quick disclaimer. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. It is recommended that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Under state law, matters presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the Traffic Safety Committee at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time the item comes up for committee consideration. Upon being acknowledged by the chair, please step to the podium and speak into the microphone. Begin by stating and spelling your name.
Good evening, Tom Conlon, C-O-N-L-O-N. I live just outside the city limits. I also serve in the capacity of Vice Chair of the Climate Action Commission of the City of Sonoma. And I just wanted to come tonight to be sure that you are aware of a couple of matters happening here in the city. First of all, the active transportation plan. The city has is in development of a active transportation plan which will address sidewalk gaps and bicycle lane improvements throughout the city. And the matter came up before our commission the other night, and I believe there was a little discussion about the possibility of perhaps wanting your body to weigh in perhaps on review that process before it closes. So there'll be a draft report coming to the city soon, and I encourage you to be aware of that. And if you choose to participate in that process, you certainly are welcome to do so. Even the idea of perhaps a joint commission meeting came up at one point, again, to be discussed with staff approval and with the chairs of the committees, I guess. Second matter I wanted to bring your attention is on August 25th, Sunday. There will be the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and the ABAG will have representatives coming here to Sonoma to discuss the Plan Bay Area 2050 plus draft plan, which is out right now. And one of the things that's been recently amended to that plan is a proposal to authorize, it would change the plan to allow the SMART train to be completed all the way up to Healdsburg, I believe. So they're taking input on that plan, and members of this committee and others might be interested in participating in that process. It's 2 to 5 p.m. On Sonoma Plaza on the 25th of August. So thank you for your consideration. Good night.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cedra Nathan, Nathan. I'm here because I want to put forward an idea about having an integrated approach and talk to you about the importance of traffic and transportation and the movement and flow of people and how that relates to traffic. And so I'm going to start off by giving you a quote from the World Health Organization, and they say that this about planning. They say that healthy community planning involves people-centric processes that position the needs of people and communities at the heart of urban planning process while recognizing the implications of planning decisions for community health and well-being. And they're talking about the movement of vehicles and the infrastructure, your urban design. And so I think that's a really important thing to remember, that as we consider our streets, our trails, our urban infrastructure, the whole point is to ensure that we have a safe and livable community, and that people, when they're asking for hazard reductions, what they're really asking for is to be able to go walk or bike without risk of life and limb. And there are lots of new tools and new ideas coming forth from groups like the National Association of City Transportation Officials, who are looking at things like tree enhancements or other elements, and are finding things like, in terms of bang for buck and integrated approaches, they're seeing things like a 20% reduction in severity of accidents by having trees on some streets, 30% reduction in the speed of cars on streets from some of these. So the enhanced use or safety on streets, and you're getting these ideas of complete street designs or strong community designs. So this is happening all over the United States and being used by smaller communities and rural towns. I know it's very hard for some municipalities to bring this into their community, but there's resources out there that I'm hoping that we might start integrating and across our commissions. And traffic and transportation, if you think about it from a human or people-centric safety perspective, then you see that representatives from your commission are talking about the same issue as representatives from the Climate Commission, as representatives from the Arts Commission, as representatives from the Parks and Recreation and Open Space Commission. I happen to be a member on the Climate Commission. I'm also the president of the Valley of the Moon Garden Club, and we're looking at a network of trails and connected pathways throughout the city. I also serve on Impact 100, and we're really interested in safe routes for schools, and we're working with the Sonoma Unified School District on that. This is not another topic, it's one topic. So I just wanted to present that idea to you all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any other public comments regarding items not on the agenda for tonight? And then I'll double check and see if there's anything on. No, we don't. That's right. We don't do that anymore. Okay. If no more general public comment, I'm going to move on to the next item, which would be the consent calendar. So all items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the committee, staff, or public request specific items to be removed for separate action. At this time, the committee may decide to change the order of the agenda. Don't see any need to change the agenda. So does the committee have any questions about the consent calendar? Seeing none, is there any public comment regarding the consent calendar? Seeing no public comment, I'm going to call for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Vice Chair Branconi,
Aye.
Committee Member Cotter,
Aye.
Committee Member Newman,
Aye.
Committee Member Wyrick,
Aye.
and Chair Lobsinger.
Aye.
And that motion carries 5002. Thank you.
All right, moving along. Now, here we come to the regular calendar. So the discussion on this is going to be the discussion on the current status of traffic hazard reports received by the Public Works Department the procedure for reporting the concerns, the metrics utilized, and the metrics utilized for evaluating them. So I'm going to turn it over to Director Berger and Project Manager Cotter.
Thank you, Chair Lobsinger. So, to date, since our last June 27, 2024 Traffic Safety Committee, the city has received 3 traffic hazard reporting forms. And actually, if we could just navigate to our handy dandy log, that would be great. There we go. So all of the items highlighted in yellow have been addressed. They were reviewed at the June 27th Traffic Safety Committee, and we're currently working on methods to address them, whether that's through the ad hoc committees that were formed at the previous Traffic Safety Committee, such as Permit Parking Ad Hoc and the Traffic Calming Ad Hoc, or looking at additional alternatives such as red and curb painting and 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, which is an agenda item tonight. So we are in progress on those. However, we don't have any actionable measures to present on those tonight. So there is no status change on those. So we will be only reviewing the ones that were received between June 27, 2024 and this Traffic Safety Committee, which we have received 3. So the first one is the 2nd Street West and Blue Wing Drive Traffic Hazard Reporting Form. And on this particular one, this was a request for a stop sign and crosswalk at the intersection of Blue Wing Drive and 2nd Street. The primary complaint on this one is speeding, and the request is for a stop sign and a crosswalk. Due to the dead end, this area isn't a major traffic generator, and the speeding is likely stemming from those who live in the area or people utilizing the ball fields. So this one, we're really just looking for input from the Traffic Safety Committee in terms of what they would like to do. We do have our city traffic engineer here as well to provide additional input as needed. And so this is the first one that we have received for this period. Oh, okay. So we'll do comments after each one. Never mind. So that is the first one. And then the second one is 651 First Street West, which I think this should be the next one. And these are pictures. Oh, sorry. Let me go back. So these are pictures of the intersection that the resident submitted with the traffic hazard reporting form of the area. The next one is 651 First Street West, and this is a red curb request. The parking area in front of this building unfortunately provides sight issues. So that the primary complaint is lack of visibility due to the parked cars when exiting the parking garage at this location, and the residents and space lessees are requesting a red curb to increase the visualization. Upon review with our city traffic engineer, they do support a red curb to increase visibility at this location. Okay. And then the third one is a request for stop signs at Chase Street and Donner Ave, 3rd Street East and Oak Lane. These are all requests for stop signs at these intersections along Chase Street. And upon review per our city traffic engineer, these additional stop signs are not warranted due to Chase Street's narrow bridge, dips throughout, and the dead ends beyond stop control at 5th Street East with a half-mile length. This traffic hazard reporting form was also only signed by one resident. And that concludes our new traffic hazard reporting forms, being that all the other ones are currently still pending. So, if the committee has any comments, on this.
Are we going to go one at a time for comment, or just comments about the last 3? I think we'd just go one at a time for the ones we just did. So on the first one, the request for a crosswalk and stop sign at 2nd West and Blue Wing. Does the committee have any comments on that one? And is the request for a three-way stop there, or just a stop sign from what would be what? Eastbound Blue Wing?
Eastbound Blue Wing is the request.
Okay.
And currently, this is a three-way intersection that does not have any stop
Yeah.
control.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean.
And, yeah, the request is just for a stop sign and a crosswalk, crossing Blue Wing and stopping Blue Wing eastbound.
Yeah. That. Shelby?
Just in looking, like, in thinking of how many cars are parked over off First Street East, and how much foot traffic is over there. When there's games, a lot of people use Blue Wing as an exit to avoid traffic going into town. So I personally am in favor of a stop sign.
Yeah, I actually walk through there quite a bit with my family. I know I bring that up at every meeting because, you know, we're walking all over Sonoma, but we walk right through there, and I always thought that they could definitely use a stop sign there because you can't really see around that corner very well. So I would be in favor of a stop sign and crosswalk right there.
Just also, I didn't mention that there's quite a few people, I live over in that area, and quite a few people that use the bike path to go up into the cemetery for hiking and walking. And so, you know, from a safety measure in that realm, I think that's important too.
Anybody else on the committee on this specific item? If not, I'll open this, for this item, I'll open up for public comment. If there's anybody here who would like to talk about Blue Wing and Second West.
Cedra Nathan again, Nathan. Thank you very much for your comments on this, and I completely agree. This is a really important pathway. The only thing I wanted to add was don't stop with stop signs. This is a really critical pathway and corridor for bicyclists, pedestrians, and links in to a broader network that could be connected pathways. And so stop signs, the way the forms are, the hazard forms, those are areas that people are concerned with. But the bigger issue, of course, is that it's connected into a larger network, and stop signs are the measure that we should be looking at to deal with the urgent issues that are immediate, but the larger context, that's just one point, or one stop, I should say, on the pathway to a more integrated transformational approach to how we deal with hazards in here. And I would say that this is a particularly fantastic example because it's such an important pathway for users of, in terms of people who live here, residents and visitors alike. It's a really important site. Anyways, there you go.
Hi again, Tom Conlon. We didn't coordinate our comments, but I do also support a more holistic look at this intersection. From the picture, and I'm not terribly familiar with the location, but from the picture, it does not look as if there is any designated bicycle lane. And I just point out that speeds tend to slow down when drivers perceive the roadway to be narrower. And so if there are in fact no bike lanes in there right now, that might be an enhancement that should be added at the same time. So that's my comment. Thanks.
My name is Gordon Drull. I live on 2nd Street East. I live in a development called Cobblestone at the top of the hill on 2nd Street. I have personally experienced a number of times when people entering eastbound from Blue Wing do not look. And I've spoken with several residents up there, and there's people also parked behind Blue Wing that probably enables another 16 or 18 residences. There's also the possibility of a development between Blue Wing and 2nd Street East of another 30 residents. So I think it's critically important that a stop sign be put there to keep things under control. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments regarding Second and Blue Wing? All right. Does the committee have any further discussion on this? In that case, I will close. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
I'm just looking at the intersection right now on Google Maps. I think that I would probably lean towards putting a stop sign as well, but you know, based upon some of the public comment, I would agree that maybe we need to look at the bigger picture, and so maybe we could gather some data on the amount of traffic and whatnot as well, because there may be, just looking at this, you know, potential pedestrian hazard from vehicles northbound 2nd Street East turning left onto Blue Wing Drive. So potentially slowing or stopping those vehicles might benefit some pedestrian safety.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion on this one?
Yeah, and just for the committee to consider, we have discussed with the traffic engineer who is here tonight, and if you want him to weigh in, the possibility of putting a crosswalk and a stop sign at this location. So you'd have a crosswalk from the 288 ramps to cross parallel to 2nd Street, and then also the stop sign.
Yeah, I'm all for hearing from the traffic engineer. My only question would be, do we hear on each item individually, or just let the traffic engineer go wild and just talk and give his thoughts on everything?
Let's just go each item individually.
All right, let's hear it.
Hi, thank you. I'm Matt Regula with GHD. So yeah, we talked about this intersection, and it currently has no control, as we all know. From the traffic hazard form and just from the comments we've heard here, it sounds like there is assignment of right-of-way issues where people on Blue Wing motorists may, make turns without looking. So that's of concern. That may indicate a need to put in one-way stop control there on Blue Wing. Certainly, if that was done, adding a crosswalk there would probably be recommended as well. There are criteria to look at, so we could always go back and, as one of the members suggested, look at some data just to verify everything. But those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Anybody have anything else to add? All right. If not, I'm going to close this item and move on to the red curb painting request for 651 First Street.
Excuse me, prior to moving on, would we have a recommended action from the committee?
So I was thinking about it, but it sounded like we're all leaning towards one direction, but I thought when we first received the forms that they weren't actionable items when we first get them in, but I'm happy to move forward.
They could be actionable, whether it's with the requested measure or an interim measure to slow traffic, etc. The request is for a stop sign. We've done engineering. We've had the traffic engineer look into this. He supports it, and along with the crosswalk, and we could move right into a recommendation to install at this time.
All right, as long as if we're okay with taking action on it.
Yeah, I was following, your script doesn't have that in there, but I was following lead on the AIS.
That's fine. Does anybody have anything to put forth?
So just to clarify, it would be a stop sign and crosswalk on the eastbound side, and then data would be collected for northbound, right?
Yeah, what I'm hearing is that we would like to collect data from a holistic standpoint for bike and ped travel. My initial thoughts there is the bike trail is just to the south of that, and there's going to be a lot of connectivity based on that, but we're certainly open to looking at and doing a little monitoring of the numbers of peds and bikes that go through there, and whether there is no sidewalk, if I'm not mistaken, on the east side. And so this could handle most, if not all, of the ped traffic putting the stop and the crosswalk in to safely get people across the street there, as safe as any other intersection. So we could look into that in the future, and I've taken some notes here to do that.
All right, I will motion that we recommend the placement of the stop sign for eastbound Blue Wing Drive and a crosswalk there, as well as gather some data to see if there's any other improvements that can be made for bicycle or pedestrian safety.
And I will second that motion.
Vice Chair Branconi,
Aye.
Committee Member Cotter,
Aye.
Committee Member Newman,
Aye.
Committee Member Wyrick,
Aye.
Chair Lobsinger.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes 5002.
All right. Okay, now I will move on to the next item. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so the red curb painting at 651 First Street, I think my initial thought would be, I'm trying to picture, is that behind the post office-ish?
Yes, it's the two-story office building that has an underground garage, and there are condos there too.
Okay.
Yeah, and this has a ramp that comes up from
Yeah.
below ground, so visibility is going to be limited. Actually, the cars coming out would be a little bit visually hard to pick up, just because they're coming from below ground. And then also, the red curb is going to give them the ability to see 100% traffic to the left as they're approaching with a good line of sight. The traffic engineers specified a dimension. We can go out and put that red curb out as soon as the committee determines that this is the route they'd like to approach.
Yeah, that would be my thought. Is there any red curb line right there at all right now?
No,
Okay.
not on the left as you're coming out of
Yeah.
the garage,
Yeah.
which would be the critical direction.
And about how much, how many feet of red curb would be the suggested?
Somewhere around 1 to 2 spots,
Okay.
1 to 2 parking spots.
So then, I mean, just kind of generally speaking, it's eliminating 1 or 2 spots from the plaza, not from the plaza, but just downtown, something to consider. But in terms of vision and people walking by, I would think putting some red curb stripe painting there would be a very reasonable request.
I would agree. I think especially with the traffic engineer looking at it and recommending it for the safety, I would be in support of it.
Anybody else on the committee have anything to add?
It is a medical building in that facility as well, so we do have people with wheelchairs and whatnot, so I think Red Zone will totally benefit them walking, so I support it.
I'm in support of it as well.
Okay. All right. If we don't have any further discussion, I'll open up to public comment on red curb painting in the area of 651 First West.
Hello, Doug Lobsinger, Lobsinger. Having been to that facility many, many times, I would fully support painting the red curb on that. It's been very dangerous to kind of pull out of there because you really cannot see when your car's tilted like that. So I strongly support the red painting of those curbs. Thank you.
All right. Any other public comment on the curb painting? Send it back to the committee. Is this something that we would need a formal? All right. I'm going to send it back to the committee for any more discussion. Do we have anything that we want to add, or does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve this to install the painting.
I'll second that.
Vice Chair Branconi,
Aye.
Committee Member Coster,
Aye.
Committee Member Newman,
Aye.
Committee Member Wyrick,
Aye.
Chair Lopsinger.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes 5002.
Okay, and moving on to the last of the most recent traffic hazard report forms, I'm just to summarize this as stop signs. Is it the Chase Street corridor? I'm trying to picture it. Just all of Chase Street? Okay. Just my initial thoughts is while I'm not for or opposed to any of these, I would definitely need more information, more time to consider all this, especially with, our ad hoc committee working on some different items. So I would not suggest any action right now. I would just like to kind of more data, more information, and I need to picture where all these stop signs would be.
And just to segue a little bit of that off that, Chair Lobsinger, to give you an idea of the areas that we're talking about here, going from east to west, the Oak Lane intersection with Chase Street, there's a dip there, and you have to go about 5 miles an hour to make it through that dip without hitting your oil pan. Then as you proceed to the west, 3rd Street East, and there's one stop sign at Oak Lane for one direction, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm not sure, northbound has a stop sign. The court on Oak Lane does not have a stop sign. Then as you travel to the east on 3rd, there's a dip at the incoming 3rd Street, which pretty slows people down quite a bit on that. And then the northbound 3rd coming into Chase, that is a dirt road. And so there's a limited amount of traffic on that road, and they are going fairly slow because it's dirt. As you get to Donner Avenue, the 3rd location on this, there's a dip at Donner Avenue that on Chase Street that slows traffic significantly, and also a single stop sign going northbound. And then at 2nd Street, there's a 2-way stop on Chase. So you've got some form of either on the cross street or Chase Street itself of speed control up and down Chase currently between Oak Lane and 2nd.
Yeah, and you also have the bridge, which is Austin Creek Bridge, which is extremely narrow. And then even if you extend out, I think 3rd Street and 4th Street are kind of offset, so they're almost 3-way intersections at that point. No, thanks for pointing that out. Those dips, yeah, you'll... Okay, any other comments or questions or thoughts from the committee? Seeing none, I'll open up to public comment on this particular item. All right, not seeing any public comment, I will send it back to the committee. Anybody have any actions, motions, or any comments? Does not look like it. Let's close this one out. We can still consider, if we see more data or anything pops up, I don't want to close it completely, but I would like to see more information on this. So let's close this out and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a review of a petition for a stop sign at East MacArthur and Oak Lane.
And prior to moving on to that, I know there are some people here tonight that are here to discuss some of the items in the traffic hazard reporting form that we're not talking about tonight.
Oh.
And because they're here, they're on the agenda, they're in the spreadsheet, I just want to give a real quick summary. Ashley already pointed out a couple of things, just moving up on the spreadsheet that we currently have. East MacArthur Street and Oak Lane, we're going to be talking about that tonight in an agenda item. MacArthur, and that is speeding, line of sight, and commercial vehicle use in that area. And then MacArthur Lane, 2nd Street East, parking problems. That's an agenda item tonight. We're going to be talking about that. 2nd Street West and Androoks, that's crosswalk striping. There hasn't been a whole lot of movement on that. There's deteriorate roadway section in there, and we haven't done anything to that since the last meeting. The 5th Street West, West Spain Street to Verano Avenue, Do we have an agenda item on that tonight to discuss the striping? No. Yeah, just an update on that. We're implementing the 2 striping configurations that we discussed at the last couple of meetings. Those are going to get installed before the next meeting. We're really close to getting that done right now. Ordering materials, and we'll be mobilizing to get that done shortly. And that'll be the crossing at Montini and the crossing upgrades at the bike trail. And so those are moving forward, and those will get done shortly. 7th Street West, the advanced traffic calming measures ad hoc that we worked on is moving that item forward, and we will give an update in that in a later agenda item. West Spain Street, the red and green curb painting that we talked about previously, the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit agenda item tonight, and the advanced traffic calming measures agenda item tonight are all moving that item forward, but there may be somebody here to talk about that also tonight. And then 5th Street East Napa, there hasn't been a whole lot of movement on that, but that is getting closed out shortly, pending the advanced traffic calming measures guidelines and taking the temporary status off of that and either removing it or making it permanent in its current location. So if there's anybody here tonight to talk about any of those, you could consider opening it up to public comment for all of them, I would think, rather than going one by one, or we could go one by one, or we could just see who's here and who wants to talk.
Yeah. Okay. A lot to unpack there. So we just went through real quickly on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items that we're going to be discussing. On the actual agenda, we have specifically East MacArthur and Oak Lane. So I don't want to ask for a show of hands. I mean, I don't know what else to do other than ask for a show of hands, because I kind of want to expedite this process. Because the MacArthur and Oak Lane thing is actually showing up on the agenda, I will probably just default to that first, since it's right here. And then maybe, if anybody has any suggestions, by the way, feel free. I don't want to have a free-for-all of just, we need to keep everything in line.
Yeah, what we could do is we could just start at the top. We could say, is there anybody here tonight to talk about
Yeah.
5th Street East, East Napa, and then just go to the next one, the next one, the next one. There's probably only 2 or 3 that we have to cover that aren't going to be covered in an agenda item.
Yeah. Okay, so this is what we'll do. We'll just go down, and I guess it's me, because we're going to need to discuss each item. So I'm just going to ask if anybody's here to speak on the behalf. And if there is, we'll add that to the list. If there's not, then we'll just kind of move off of that list. But we won't actually ask people to come up. So, first one, is anybody here for 5th East and East Napa Street? Okay, no. Next one, West Spain Street, from 1st West to 5th West.
Sandra Zimmerman, Zimmermann, and I live at 275 West Spain Street. I just wanted to give you a sad update. One of the reasons our group got together to try to calm the traffic was not just because there was obviously speeding and whatever going on, but because there was such a problem at 3rd and 2nd in terms of that crosswalk right where General Vallejo's home is. And neighbor on one side's child almost got hit there. Another neighbor actually got hit. His dog got hit. He was dragged to the ground, airlifted out, whatever. And sadly, he has now passed away. Never recovered from that incident. And so it's a real big issue for us that we want people to be safe when they're walking across that street, and that things really need to happen there to mitigate. And I really appreciate the work that Mike has been doing on trying to help calm that street. But and I appreciate red curbs and all of that, but I think we need more than that. And I just wanted to let you know that is and I think the fact that the neighborhood has gotten together and tried to get the city to create some sort of action is really, it would be, not only is it a sad situation, I think it's a liability for the city that they haven't reacted to that particular spot to try to make it safer, and I appreciate your time and efforts.
Thank you.
Tom Collin again. I'll just briefly mention on this route that there was many years ago in the general plan and the circulation plan, a proposal to put a class 2 bicycle lane along Spain Street in this area. And that came before the city council, and it was opposed by downtown merchants who are concerned about the loss of parking. So I just once again would bring back to you all, this problem has not gone away. It continues to be a problem. Anybody that tries to get to the plaza from 5th Street, from Spain Street at 5th, I was on a bike with my kid not too long ago and almost run off the road by big trucks that were trying to pass us because we were going 25 miles an hour on our bikes, but that wasn't fast enough for this particular driver. So it continues to be a problem, and I'm glad to see it on your agenda tonight. Thank you.
I'm just going to also provide some context about Spain Street and 3rd Avenue West in terms of connectivity and connection. That street, if you continue farther south, is where the Fires Creek Trail is. And so connecting from there into General Vallejo, that park, that's basically a missing link or a gap of pedestrian safety, because this is part of a larger integrated network where we have people walking and bicycling and moving throughout our city in this active transportation mode of pedestrian bicycle safety. And that area right there at 3rd Street in Spain and 3rd Street in Napa is part of a linkage, a larger neat linkage, but has gaps in it for pedestrian safety. And that's where you have these, what people would call euphemistically, car-human interactions, which the first speaker spoke about so sadly. And so that needs a more of a transformational approach to making that more safe for people and looking at it in terms of this larger connected network and seeing where people are really moving and flowing and throughout our city. And that's a key corridor. Anyways, thank you very much.
Armando Zimmerman, West Spain Street. Basically, we submitted our group submitted a request initially back on 5/18/22, if you can see that. And one of the things that continues to be an issue, I mean, there's a lot of them, but the volume on West Spain Street can be pretty high, traffic volume of every type of vehicle, motorcycles, bicycles, whatever. And in fact, in our original report, we put in a volume, 1-day 24-hour volume going both east and west. And the number of cars at that point, not cars, vehicles, I'm sorry, was over 9,000 in a 24-hour period. Now, I'm not saying that happens every day, but it's basically folks that don't want to take Highway 12 use West Spain Street as the alternative. So the point is here, the reason we refined, in fact, we just submitted something, an update to traffic safety. Maybe you didn't get it. We submitted it yesterday on our original request. And if you see there where we're asking for a small traffic circle, cities like Hillsburg, Windsor, Santa Rosa, Petaluma, and there's one city back east, Carmel, Indiana, if you care to look at it online, that's basically done away with four-way stops, a lot of traffic signals, and whatever, and just gone to traffic circles, or in bigger areas, they've gone to roundabouts. And so we're talking about a small traffic circle there, not what the county and Caltrans are planning just south of the city, which that would be a big roundabout. We've been looking at a lot of things. We've been looking at this concept of Vision Zero, which is get ahead of things before bad things happen. And unfortunately for Santa Rosa, bad things have been happening. But Santa Rosa right now, from what I read in the paper, has gotten to the point where they're lowering speed limits on many, many streets, at least in 5-mile-an-hour increments. And they're using a new rule that basically allows that municipality to do that without having to do a specific traffic safety or traffic speed, whatever. They're because they've had so many injuries and accidents and that kind of stuff. So basically,
Mr. Zimmerman, you have to wrap up your
oh,
comments.
I'm sorry.
Please.
Okay. So one of the things I've run across too is a federal program. I don't know if the city's aware of it, called Safer Streets, where there's federal money available to cities to try to mitigate traffic issues, common issues, pedestrian safety and whatnot. So I'm hoping that we can get an update at least on where our request stands at this point, since we've been waiting over 2 years for some kind of response.
Okay. Thank you. Any other public comments regarding West Spain from 1st to 5th? Okay, I'm going to send it to the committee. But I think my inclination is to have Director Berger weigh in about what's being worked on in future plans. But actually, Shelby, if you want to jump in first.
No, there were some public comments on 3rd Street, so I just want to clarify that this is 1st and 5th, right?
I believe it's the Spain Street from
Yes.
1st.
Okay. There were a couple people that had mentioned, so I just want to make sure.
It's a Spain Street corridor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically from the Plaza to probably 5th Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to give you a little bit more information on what we've been working on, as the log indicates, we've already started painting red curb. We're going to get a lot more red curb painted before the end of summer. That will happen on Spain Street. Also, the speaker talked about the proposed 20-mile-per-hour drop that Santa Rosa is currently contemplating. Napa has already done it. And as some of the traffic committee members know, we're also looking into doing that too. And taking some streets around town and turning those into 20-mile-an-hour. And then also the advanced traffic calming measures. We talked about a traffic circle. That's being proposed as one of the measures that the ad hoc worked on for in our last meeting this month with the ad hoc group. So there's 3 items on this particular stretch of roadway that are moving forward. Have we gone out there and done mass traffic calming measures? No. One of the reasons is that I brought up before is we're going to repave the street, and to go out there and do all the striping upgrades and then take it all off when we redo the street, it just doesn't, it's not cost effective. So we are moving forward with at least 2 or 3 different items on this though, and they're also getting updated tonight as we take on the different agenda items.
Just a clarification, when it's repaved, and we know it's going to be repaved, will the striping be the same as it is right now, or are we going to do any additional striping that's going to kind of alter the street?
Yeah, we could do additional striping. And then I also wanted to elaborate a little bit on the section of the bike trail that was discussed. My understanding is that was discussed a while back, but then that was also decided not to occur because of the bike trail that is just a half-mile, quarter-mile to the north. And so there do exist plans at Public Works for that bike trail or bike path on the north side of Spain Street in the areas that we're talking about that would eliminate the parking lane along there. And my understanding is it was decided that was not something we were going to pursue because of the bike trail being constructed. So there's just a little more information.
Yeah, I mean, my initial thoughts would be to encourage people to use the bike path. We use it all the time. And when the street does finally get paved, maybe just make the intersections, the striping at the intersections, crosswalks more visible. And then obviously the ad hoc committee is working on the traffic circle at 3rd West and West Spain. But it sounds like we're making some good progress. Anybody else in the committee have anything? Any motions? Any? Okay. All right. With that, I will close this item out and move on. Does anybody have any comments regarding 7th Street West? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to public comment regarding 5th Street West between West Spain and Verano Avenue. And Mike, could you just reiterate what it is, the plan is there again?
Yeah, within the next month, we're going to have the 2 intersections. Well, the bike trail isn't exactly an intersection, but we're doing crosswalk upgrade at the bike trail, and we're also doing adding crosswalks at Montini, which is when you're heading north, it's just before the field on the right-hand side. Yeah, so we'll be doing striping upgrades at all those locations and adding crosswalks where currently there aren't any.
Great. Is there any public comment regarding 5th West between West Spain and Verano Avenue?
Thank you. I'll try to be brief. So I'm pleased to hear there's crosswalks at the bike path, crosstown bike path, and I agree that's a critical bicycling corridor for the city. I use it all the time. I rarely use Spain Street. Sometimes, though, you have to use Spain Street. And also for tourists who come to the plaza, they don't know about the bike lane up there a lot of times. And to Verano, I just want to point out the opportunity we have here. Pointed this out to the county because that above Verano, of course, that's county land. There is a easement through the Montini property, essentially 5th Street West. There was plans to potentially have 5th Street West continue to Donald Avenue, which is in the county. And as part of the Spring Specific Plan, it's been proposed through that public process that there may be someday an interest in making Donald Street a more bicycle-friendly route that would potentially connect there to Verano. And then you could have a bike lane running along the cow pasture, Montini, and then down into the city to really get traffic off of Highway 12, bicycle pedestrian traffic off of Highway 12. So I'm very pleased to hear there's improvements happening here. And I also was excited, Mike, to see the long-term plan, the grant-funded opportunities through the your upcoming grant, Go Sonoma Grant project, which will have improvements along the entire crosstown bike path. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments regarding 5th West between Spain and Verano? Seeing no more, is there any discussion among the committee? Doesn't look like there is any, so we'll move on to the next item, which is 2nd West and Andrew. This is a request for crosswalk striping. Any public comment regarding 2nd West and Andrew? Seeing none, does the committee have any comments, questions regarding 2nd West and Andrew Street? Does not appear to be any, so we will close that one out for now and move on to MacArthur Lane and 2nd East area. And this is the parking problems that we've had. And before Mike, did you have an update on that one? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'll update it in item 4.3.
Oh, is it 4.3? Oh,
yep.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I think that we're pretty much done going through the log.
Yeah, okay. I didn't realize that was part of the okay, perfect.
Yeah, so we could probably go on to 4.2.
Okay, so then that being said, let's move on to item 4.2, which is the review of a petition for a stop sign at East MacArthur and Oak Lane. And I'm going to turn it over to Director Berger and Manager Cotter.
Okay, so at the June 27th, 2024 Traffic Safety Committee meeting, a traffic hazard reporting form was submitted for review requesting a stop sign at East MacArthur and Oak Lane. The petitioner received feedback that a signed petition clearly requesting a stop sign in order to show neighborhood support would further this cause, and recently a petition with 70 signatures in support of a stop sign at this location was received by the Public Works Department. We did have the city traffic engineer review this request, and utilizing traffic judgment, the traffic engineer does support the installation of a stop sign at this location. And our city traffic engineer has also prepared a technical memorandum that I believe all of our council members present have been provided. This is not part of the agenda packet, so this is an in-meeting distribution of this material. And we do have our traffic engineer here to discuss that as well.
Yeah, so the memo before you, cool, basically goes through the nexus of the issue, the data collection effort that was conducted. The city actually has collected data at this location over a couple of different time periods in 2023 and 2024, and we've summarized that data in the memo. We have an estimate of traffic there, and we have looked into the location crash history. Over the last 5 years, there were no crashes. However, the systemic safety analysis did identify numerous crashes along this corridor historically. So we know there was evidence between 2012 and 2016 of 4 crashes, pretty much fronting the school property. So that's Presswood School. So the majority of the criteria for a multi-way stop is not met, but due to the location being at a school and the presence of children and the chaotic scene of drop-off and pickup, we do recommend that the all-way stop be put in. This is partially also because of the Prestwood School Loop. An all-way stop, particularly at school drop-off and pickup, will provide orderly operation for the intersection. And those are the primary reasons why we recommend it.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to now open up to any questions or comment from the committee. I know we're kind of going through this memo right now. There's a lot of info, but anything from the committee right now? Sounds like a pretty solid recommendation from the traffic engineer.
Yeah, I think we've discussed this a little bit in the prior meeting, and I would be in support of a stop sign.
I am 100% in support of the stop sign.
Yeah, and just to be clear, this is a 4-way stop that's being proposed. So one of them is on the road coming out of the drop-off roundabout that goes into Prestwood. There would be, and that it's an implied stop right now, but there is no stop sign there currently. Then you would have one on eastbound MacArthur, one on westbound MacArthur, and then there's a current stop sign at Oak Lane. So it's a modified 1-way stop right now, and it will turn into an official 4-way stop.
I mean, I've obviously gone on record in my support of a stop sign right there. I'll just add one thing, which is I spoke to the crossing guard at Prestwood, and I just wanted her thoughts on it. And when I said, what do you think about a stop sign right there? And she said a very resounding absolutely. I spoke to her for a little bit, and she said the school would welcome it. She's out there every day. She gave me some of her concerns. I voiced some of my concerns at previous meetings. So it sounds like it would be welcomed by the school as well. She can't speak on behalf of the school, but she felt pretty good about her thought. So that's the only thing I would add, other than I would support it. So on that note, unless there's anything further from the committee, I will open it up to public comment. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak about a four-way stop?
Hi, my name is Ed Case, CISE, and I was one who initiated the original request and was able, with the help of neighbors, to get the 70 people to sign the petition. These are all the people adjacent to the stop signs, as well as a number of people around the community. School's back in session, and I'm already seeing people concerned about getting across the street. I saw a person yesterday, young child going to school, toddler. 2 cars went through the intersection, the crosswalk, before she was able to get across the street. So it continues to be a problem, and it's more evident now, as well as at the after-school activities that we continue to see. So we appreciate the work that Public Works has done and the recommendation, and we look forward to improving traffic safety for the residents as well as for all the students and going to Crestwood.
Hi, I'm Jim Shea, S-H-A-Y. I also support the stop sign. I'm one of the signers of the petition. I'm at Presswood every week. I'm a mentor to an elementary school kid, and I see, as I walk over there and walk back, the kids trying to cross the street, and it's, you know, it kind of breaks your heart to see them kind of pull back and worry about stepping into the crosswalk. So that's one of my reasons for it. The other is the community. Lots of people use that corridor. People are walking up and down all the time. And it's kind of a speedway right now as the cars go through. It's a dividing line in our community. It shouldn't be a speedway. Thank you.
Hello, Doug Lobsinger, L-O-B-S-I-N-G-E-R. I live at 301 East MacArthur Street. And I appreciate the recommendation that we're hearing today on the stop sign. I've lived there quite a few years now, and I've seen some close calls. So I truly appreciate that, and the additional safety is going to be well received. I would like to also ask that maybe the city take a closer look, though, at the big trucks that continue to go down MacArthur Street that should not be going down East MacArthur. It's kind of an ongoing issue that I think needs to also be resolved in order to mitigate the safety hazards that are created by those big trucks. So we would appreciate the city looking into that a little bit closer, because something could very well happen if that doesn't slow down a little bit. Thanks very much.
I'm obviously echoing everything everyone else says, but I'm going to be pushing further, of course, because I'm hoping that we do even more greater things. And this site in particular, because it's little kids, so you have to think about the space, you know, how what size they are, and the danger of children crossing streets. And so some of these new design initiatives and traffic calming and safety features that we're seeing coming out of research and traffic engineering reports include things like large tabletop designs, which are the width of a couple of cars, and they elevate kids so that they are taller, basically, when they're crossing streets, and have the added value of also slowing down things like large trucks. And so these are not speed humps or speed bumps. It's a design that's used throughout Europe, and you're starting to see in communities here. They're starting to use them more on the East Coast and the West Coast, but they're fabulous around schools because of the size differential with the kids who are crossing those streets. And that's where they're starting to be used the most. And they're one of the best practices that we see in the Safe Routes to Schools publications for enhancing road safety and children crossing streets. So I just want to throw that out there too. Thank you.
And just for the record, we have one proposed for the Go Sonoma project at the Unip-Rosero crossing on the bike trail.
All right, thank you. Any further comment on stop sign recommendation at MacArthur and Oak Lane? Seeing no more public comment, I'm going to send it back to the committee if there are any other questions or any motions. And me being the one who's the most vocal about it, I would motion that we install the stop sign at East MacArthur Street and Oak Lane.
I second that motion.
Committee member, or Vice Chair Branconi?
Aye.
Committee member Coster?
Aye.
Committee member Newman?
Aye.
Committee member Wyrick?
Aye.
Chair Lobsinger?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes 5002.
All right, thank you. Now we're going to move on to the next item. It's going to be the ad hoc meeting report out. And this is regarding permit parking, and this will concern the, this will involve MacArthur Lane and, so MacArthur Lane and, is it Donner? Yes. Sorry, second. I was looking for it and I couldn't. There it is. Okay. So, Mike and Ash, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. So on July 24th, 2024, our permit parking ad hoc committee met, and it was attended by city staff, Frank Penry, our city contracted traffic engineer, Mike Berger, director of public works, myself, Ashley Cotter, public works admin and project manager, and the traffic safety committee permit parking ad hoc attendees were committee member Wyrick, vice chair Branconi, and committee member Coster. So the overall goal of this ad hoc committee were to decide on some key criteria to include in our permit parking program. So as part of our research, we looked at and provided examples from the cities of Costa Mesa, San Mateo, Tustin, and Santa Clara. And we're also clear in terms of the process for this because the police department will ultimately manage and implement this criteria. The permit parking program will be approved by the police department due to their role in the implementation. So in terms of criteria, we did go over quite a few, and our committee members did have some input. So one of those included making it residential only, so not to include the Plaza district, establishing a parking occupancy, and this is basically a number to show how much available parking, street parking is available in the neighborhood at a given time. And so committee members supported 70% utilization on that existing street, meaning that 70% of on-street parking is not available due to use from like a parking generator, such as the high school or a sporting event or what have you. And so 70% was the number that committee members supported. They also supported establishing zones. This is usually done through a parking study, or it's typically 4 blocks or 2,000 square feet. Committee members agreed with this measurement. There was some parking programs charge a fee for parking permits, and committee members did support a $25 permit per term, up to $100 per household, with the caveat that each vehicle receives 1 gas permit, but the primary permit holder must have a paid permit on file, and parking permits would either look like stickers on the windshield, or stickers on the back of the car, or a physical card to be placed on the windshield. A term permit would be valid for about 2 years. And then in terms of the limit for where permit parking would be established, it would not be established on minor arterial roads or collectors. These are areas where you have a lot of volume, and so typically permit loss of parking is not usually an issue, or parking occupancy is not usually an issue. In terms of percentage of residents supporting permit parking, committee members supported the metric of 75% of the specific radius, which is the square footage or blocks, would have to sign a petition for permit parking indicating their support. And then in addition, for community support, committee members supported 75% of the community must vote on permit parking after the petition has been heard. So that's kind of a two-part process, one to get the petition going and then another vote to approve the action on the petition. And then additionally, committee members supported the use of data collection. So going out over like a 3-month timeline to give the Traffic Safety Committee enough time to collect data to provide a recommendation. And then in additional, there are other areas that we could utilize this permit parking program. So for example, if it's by a church, school, park, or heavily trafficked area, that would be a qualifier for an area to have permit parking. And then additional supporting information that would be reviewed upon receiving this request would be evidence of recurring traffic safety reporting forms or evidence of any police reports or citations. Additionally, options to consider in the area prior to requesting permit parking would be options for overflow parking. Are there options that work with their neighbors, city, or local businesses to find a resolution first before going to permit parking? And are there problems with public access? And this is more towards like, is there a park that we can't block off or restrict parking to? Are there certain features in the neighborhood that people need to be able to access at all times? And those are all the criteria that was discussed in the feedback that the committee members provided. So in terms of next steps, we would have another ad hoc committee meeting to kind of firmly package our permit parking program, be firm on our criteria, and then we, after that ad hoc committee meeting, Public Works would work with PD to get that approved. At this time, I don't believe we would need a resolution to or an ordinance to amend the municipal code. And then this graphic is an analysis that I put together of the different agencies that we looked at in terms of, and these all criteria were things that were evident in all of the different parking permit programs. It just in terms of, you know, whether or not they require that area to be a parking permit or a parking generator, or required a petition, a survey, if a cost, what was that, whether or not they approved mixed use, which would be approval for permit parking in commercial as well as residential, whether or not there was enforcement and what that looked like, the level of community support, and so on.
Okay, thank you. There was a lot in there. That was very detailed. So I was not part of this ad hoc committee, so forgive me if I missed a couple things, but just a couple thoughts came to mind. My general thought is, how is this going to impact the rest of the city? Not only where it's going to qualify, who's going to ask for it. My initial thoughts are around the plaza. More people will be asking for permit parking. But one of the things that there were a couple things that I was thinking about. The 75% vote from the community, that's just to make a certain area. Just like, so in this case would be MacArthur, Donner second. Would that, or do these other cities, you know, and Ashley, I don't want to put you on the spot. If anybody else has the answer, please let me know. Does that include the people who aren't in that immediate area? Because to me, that would be, they're impacted because I can't park here now, I'm going down the street.
Right, and so that's kind of the point of the parking zone. So by creating a zone, you don't want to push the problem farther down. So it's wide enough that it's going to, you know, it's going to be incredibly inconvenient for people to park elsewhere. Okay. And so there will be, I'm sure, some spillover effects, you know, and we'll address those as we move forward. But parking zones are established to make sure you're not just isolating one street and then pushing all the parking into the next. So by creating a 4-block or 2,000 square foot radius, you're ensuring on some level that you're the problem is it's harder to push because of the area.
Yeah. Okay. Because my next thought on that is there's a lot of numbers and a lot of cities are doing different things. That my initial thought was some type of a pilot program, like let's test it out for a month or two and kind of see, because I'm sure there's a lot of things we're not thinking about, or there could be a lot of unintended consequences. But then my last thought on it, and I don't want to put Chief Cutting on the spot, but I'm going to the not only enforcement but just kind of generally speaking, Chief, if you have any thoughts on it, I'd be more than happy to hear them.
So Obviously, the primary zone that we're talking about is that 2nd Street East, MacArthur Lane area. Enforcement down there is pretty simple. And I think a piece of this plan allows us to have the opportunity to review this in advance of it becoming a zone so that we can address the enforcement side of it. Yeah, if we had more major portions of the city all try to get into this at the same time, enforcement would be difficult. It does afford us, it doesn't mean that we're going to be doing parking enforcement every single day from 9 to 5 every day. But what it does allow us to do is to give random enforcement and to go down to those areas when there's a critical need for us to be there and do the enforcement that's necessary. So neighbors that live in that community, they see cars that are parking illegally, they call us, we can come down there and we actually have an enforceable action where currently we don't. So from that perspective, from the enforcement side, I really like the concept. I like the thought that's gone into it, and I think it's something that we can actually work with.
That's great, thank you. Okay, so those are my thoughts. Anybody else from the committee? Jay, I know we weren't part of it, but if you guys have more to add, please.
We spent a lot of time really looking at this and discussing how this makes sense because our town is unique, and so not every area, it's not cookie cutter. So one thing we did not discuss is kind of doing a temporary, obviously having this area as our guinea pig, right? Seeing how it goes and learning from that. But we try to also keep it open and kind of discretionary because of the fact that the city isn't cookie cutter. So.
Just a couple things that we kind of discussed was trying not to handcuff ourselves to make things too specific, but then, and I didn't quite make it to this summary, but one thing that came up is if we were trying not to impact too many people by causing them to have to purchase permits, we could start at a smaller area, and then if we determine that we are pushing the problem out, then we could expand it to that bigger area that we discussed. And I think, kind of looking at these things on a case-by-case basis, although we want to streamline them, there are a lot of nuances to these specific situations. So that was one other thing that we discussed. Something that I kind of wanted to get a feel for from the rest of the committee, but Adam and Jay tonight, is my thought was to have an escalator on the permits, and then cap guest parking at 2. So the first 2 permits can come with guest parking. Beyond that, no. And then the first 2 permits would be $25, and then beyond that would be $50 for the 2-year term. Just because if we allow people to get 4 permits and 4 guest passes, you're talking about 8 vehicles potentially per, and then that might kind of defeat the purpose of this whole program.
Yeah, I think the idea of running it somewhat like a pilot program, because it'd be helpful to hear after it's in place how it's working, especially from the neighbors who are going to be using it. So we might be able to tweak it and make it work better. So this is all, experimental at this point.
I support that. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I support your view on the pilot program, and I kind of back that recommendation as well. There's just, like Mark said, there's just a lot here to take in, and I support the pilot program.
Is just a question for the city staff. Is it possible to do a pilot program?
I don't necessarily know that we need to do a pilot program on this because we do have multiple different areas where this is a problem and this will address it. In terms of our ability to make changes to this as it goes, I don't believe we would have, I think those are changes we would have to bring to traffic safety. I don't think that it would be necessarily a city council improved process at this point, which would make making changes to this easier. And so, given the fact that we have these areas, I don't necessarily know, but Mike, your thoughts?
The main purpose of the ad hoc was to develop criterias 1 through 10 and 1 through 9 and promote discussion on these. So even if it isn't 1 through 9, there's some thoughts that are going around that are very productive to making this a successful program. Remember, this is an existing program. We're not totally sure how the streets that are in it got incorporated into it. It could have been through the initial effort when it was conceived. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to come up with criteria, even though we already have some permit parking in the city. We're trying to come up with criteria to establish these zones. And this first zone that we're talking about at 2nd and MacArthur, there's two things that we're trying to get across the finish line here. One of them is to come up with criteria. The second one is to respond to the traffic hazard reporting form that we've got from the neighbors at 2nd and MacArthur. So I think that if we stay focused on the criteria and working with PD on that, this could be something that we could firm up within a short time. And then we could implement the program as soon as this criteria has been decided. And so, to me, I'm thinking that if we focus on the criteria and working with the police department, that forthcoming, we could set up our first test case. And I don't think that we have to worry about the permanence of it. I think we could go ahead and put it in. And if we had significant problems, we could address them by working with the police department and with the neighbors and see how it works.
One thing that we discussed during the meeting that I just wanted to see if we could maybe get a rough number on is the cost of implementation. And I know that some of that's going to come from the public works side, some's going to come from the PD, as far as the occupancy evaluation, which we talked about with Frank, which I know he said would be no more than $1,000 per. But then talking about the signage, the installation of signage, and then the police department actually administering the program, and the cost to produce the stickers, things like that, and the admin staff that are going to be potentially issuing them. So if we could get a ballpark idea between public works side and PD side of the cost, just to make sure that the cost that we're recommending for the permits makes sense, because in my mind I would want it to be at minimum a cost neutral thing for the city.
Yeah, and kind of on that note, when I think pilot program, I think where my brain went was more, I think the criteria look great so far, that makes sense, and I absolutely believe they can be tweaked and adjusted. For me, it's more of just kind of a review period, 2, 3, 4, 6 months later with community feedback, police feedback. Is this working, or does it need? I don't think it would, but does it need to be scrapped altogether? And if it does, what does that look like? So that's what I think of when I think of pilot program. Just that we have an ability to go, this isn't working, or this needs to be really adjusted before we move forward with it. So more of a review process. That's kind of the big one. But otherwise, yeah, I think right now, as it looks, it looks like it's an almost finished product.
Hey, that sounds good. I concur with that. And then also thinking in the future about how another neighborhood would go about acquiring something like this, I would expect that they would fill out a traffic hazard reporting form. On this one, we've got a lot of the data already collected as far as I'm concerned. I think PD has spent a lot of time out there, determined, yeah, we have we've met some of this criteria already. We don't have to do any more surveys. And, but obviously we concur that with the chief. But I think that then the traffic committee would make a recommendation, and then that recommendation could be taken to the police department through Public Works. And then the police department would have the right to say, well, no, we don't think so. And here's why. And because they administer the program. And, or we think that this should change and here's why. Or we think this is fine and here's why. Yeah, so in the future, you know, I think it's a great idea to consider checking in 6 months and seeing how everything worked. But in terms of the criteria that's presented tonight, if the committee wanted to take a vote on if they like the criteria the way it's presented as a test, you know, this is the trial criteria that we're going to try at first. And then in 6 months after implementation, if we decide that we want to change one or two of them, we could go along that route.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds good to me, but before we move forward with that, we do need to, unless the committee has anything else to discuss, we would move on to public comment on this. And so that's what I'll do. Unless somebody has anything on the committee right now, I'll open up to public comment, and we can discuss afterwards motions and whatnot. So public comment on, I'm going to say MacArthur Lane.
Good evening. My name is Judith Alex, and I'm the one who put together the traffic hazard form on behalf of this issue. I'd like to thank Chief Cutting for all his help this past year. It's been so incredible, the support of the police department. I want to point out all the neighbors here tonight who are in support of this. I personally feel it would be great to try it and give what I want to echo what Chief Cutting was saying about the chance to implement it, to give us the chance to help out, you know, because we've been such a great group of community of talking to each other. Director Berger came out and we all met in the driveway. It was so great. So I appreciate your thoughts, your feedback. It's tricky about the cost, and I'll leave that up to you guys, but that's what I have to say. Thank you.
At risk of wearing out my welcome up here, I just want to say I'm very impressed with the work of the ad hoc. Well, first of all, I guess I should start with the community members bringing this forward for your attention in the first place. I'm also impressed with Ms. Cotter's work. You did a great job in putting this report together. I feel there's a lot of data in front of us, and I feel very confident that this is exactly the right way to introduce a parking program in the city of Sonoma. There's community support for it already. You're taking it slow. You're not over-specifying. I do hope you listen to your staff, Mike's comment here, to not like have the pilot explode at a certain date, and if there's not a decision made, it falls apart. Keep it flexible because you're going to learn things as we go forward. So a lot of praise here. I want to be sure I understand I think requiring a 75% vote. I think if I understand Ms. Cotter's work, that in looking at the other jurisdictions, that's a very high threshold. And so if there is a reason why we want to be so much of an outlier, when we kick it off, because we might not have that in every possible place where this makes sense around the city. We might not get 70, we might get 74%, which means minority rule by the 26% that don't get to, who don't want this to happen in their neighborhood. So I try to avoid maybe putting that number down would be my recommendation just in reading through this. And if there is a rationale that I haven't heard, I'd like to hear that tonight. And then finally, just coordination. I think that some of the issue here might be high school related and the parking situation there, but I'd be wrong. But I know that's a concern in some other parts of the city. And so making sure that there's been attempts to work on sort of the supply side of the parking spillover as well. So I don't know what the policies are at the high school, but do they charge for parking? Are there barriers to parking inside that location, or are there other barriers wherever the parking's coming, where the non-resident parking is coming from? Try to work on those barriers too. So, great work.
Hi, I'm Dawn Williams, Williams. I'm not sure by the way it's been presented, but it sounds like we have to start again and fill out a petition and apply. Is that what we're suggesting? Okay, good. And then I don't really understand the definition of the 75% community. I don't understand what community means, what that reaches, because we couldn't get 75% of Sonoma's degree on anything, let alone a parking issue. So I'm just not sure what the definition of community members voting on that would mean. So those are my questions. I don't know if we can address them, but I really appreciate the work you've done, because it's an ongoing, as of today, parking across the red zones, no pedestrian access problem. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we're supposed to keep public comment going, but just if you want to address that.
Sure. So we had a lot of discussion around the percentage and when you're looking at an entire neighborhood, because when you're implementing the permitted parking and asking people to pay, right, that's money out of their pocket. So we wanted to have a majority. And granted, neighborhoods have different types of housing, so this could come up down the road, that it could be within an area of apartment building, complex. So we want to just make sure that we're mindful of the community, and so that's why we chose 70%, because I'm sure there's going to be no's down the road, but we want to make sure it's equitable. Yes, within that. Where was it? This third part where it talks about the zones established. So within that area, 70% would say yes.
Drew Levy, Levy. I live on MacArthur Lane, and I'm sure I speak for the group here when I want to express my admiration and appreciation for the research, the thoughtfulness, and the excellent presentation of the background that Ms. Cotter provided us. As for the concern about displacement of the parking, the problem, I want to remind us that the high school has a parking lot, and if there are reasons that's an obstacle to the students and others using the facilities for using that parking lot, we need to think about what those obstacles are and possibly mitigate for what's going on as you exit or enter the parking lot for the high school. Think about there'll be consequences possibly, and there may be ways of mitigating that problem as well. But they have a resource. They're just not, the incentives aren't there to make them use it.
Just wanted to really quickly address the school issue. School parking last year was very different than it is this year. I don't know how many, especially for you living over there, if you've noticed, but there's significantly less student parking in your neighborhood since last week. The MacArthur Place employees have been parking more in your street, so that's an issue. The school has addressed general parking on campus with all students. Creekside also opened up their parking lot for their students, which was a significant portion of your neighborhood last year. Construction was finished on the science building, which reopened student parking and staff parking. So you will have less day-to-day student parking even without this program than you had last year. You'll still have students, but less. So, and the school is doing a very good job working with their students, even on the First Street West side, just for your information, that they have opened up parking for all students. All students are trying to park on campus. That said, I can't say it'll last all year because kids find ease in parking across the street and leaving the campus quickly, and the school does not have the authority to force them to park on campus. Thank you.
Hi, Will Chan, C-H-A-N. I'm a resident of MacArthur Lane. Again, I want to acknowledge Chief Cutting and his team for everything they've done, the committee, and all of the consideration of. Need point of clarification. When you say 70 or 75% of the impacted area, I think what our neighbor was asking was, we're the impacted area. So is it talking about the pilot of just the MacArthur Lane between Donner and Second? Or is it the, like 2,000, 4,000 square foot radius that you were talking about?
So we're talking about the entire area that you were talking about, or that's proposed.
Okay, so that's our neighborhood.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Nothing on the other side of MacArthur Street.
On the other side of MacArthur. So like 2nd Street East heading north?
Yeah, like Presswood and everything?
No.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Because, those folks aren't necessarily impacted. The other comment I want to make is, as for the school and the facilities, it's a cause and effect. Many of us moved in before the athletic field, and so this is where our concern is, outside of the student park on a daily basis, is the public use, and we support that, but it becomes a parking lot for the youth sports. Then the swim center's open now, football games on the weekends, or even on Friday evenings. I think that's our primary concern, that our neighborhoods become a parking lot. So again, I'm in favor of a pilot. I'm happy to be a guinea pig, and we just want to see some action, because I think Judith, to her credit, took up the banner, and several of us have tried it, probably, I think some had said for like 15 or 20 years, to address the issue. So again, we thank you to the committee, the chief, Mike Berger, and other folks in the city. So I'm happy to see we made some progress.
My name is Susie Burrus, B-U-R-R-U-S, and this is just a very detailed question because I haven't seen the original petition for a long, long time, but we keep saying Second and MacArthur. I just want to make sure that this impacted area is also the one block of Donner. Okay, thank you.
Any other public comment regarding permit parking, MacArthur, Donner? Then I will throw it back to the committee.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Kind of an open question. What's the opposition to the issue here? I mean, I'm not asking neighbors' names or anything like that. Has there been any opposition to this issue? Like percentage, 5% of people, we're talking 70, 75%. Has there been any? I see a lot of heads saying no. Thank you.
I actually have a few questions. I mean, I think that, to piggyback up, Jay, what you just said, if there were any opposition, my only suggestion would be expand the area a little bit, because if we're just talking about that immediate area, that the people who live on MacArthur between Prestwood and MacArthur Place, and then going, let's say, one block down on Second or Donner, I think they would be impacted. So I think they should have some level of say on that one. We don't need to take a poll from the whole city. That's not what we need, but it shouldn't. I think there should be some kind of criteria. And I thought we talked about that. I'm not sure, but are we covering the area around, or it really is just that immediate area? That would be my suggestion. Is we at least span out a couple blocks, or a block or so. That's my thought. The second one is more of a, how do we do this? How is the voting taking place? Is it through the petition? Do we need to verify signatures? Do we need to send out ballots for people just in that area? How is it administered?
Okay. So that is just that was kind of adopted from the city of Costa Mesa. So what they do is that when a petition is received, they, after doing the parking occupancy study and zoning that area, will send out like a mail voter, essentially, and then you have to, mail back your vote. And that's the city of Costa Mesa. However, that can be done in a multitude of different ways. Doesn't necessarily have to be a mail-in voter. It could be, come to traffic safety if you support it, etc. It can look different. That's just the protocol that we pulled from an example city that had that. And that's just another level to show community support, because if permit parking does get implemented and it turns out there's a lot of people that actually don't want it in that area, it's going to be problematic. So it's just an additional benchmark protection layer to make sure that it is widely supported by the people that are going to be impacted. And we could also amend that to make it a signed petition as well. Anything really just to indicate support.
And to the first part of your question, the initial discussed distances were 2,000 feet, which would be approximately 4 blocks. But in my mind, that's kind of why I wanted to say we should be flexible with this, because to Mr. Shan's point, where they are significantly affected in the area we're talking about, they're less affected at MacArthur. And so I think we need to have this balance a little bit where we have this high number of 75% support discussed. That's great if we just take these 3-4 streets affected. But if we do kind of go out to the areas that will be affected if we implement this, then there may not be as much support out there. So maybe that 75% threshold might be too high. And so I think there might need to be a little bit more work done on this before a motion. That would be my opinion on this. I think maybe a little bit more work, discussion before we try to throw even a pilot in play.
Yeah, those are my exact thoughts, is that number does seem high. I think it's worth coming down a little bit, because I do think the people who live a block, 1,000 feet, whatever, outside of the immediately impacted area should be able to have a say on that. Because I know the people 5 blocks away might not be impacted by it, but the people who live on the, northeast corner of MacArthur and Donner, or MacArthur and Second, or the people who live 2 doors in on MacArthur and Second, Donner and Second, they might feel the impact of it, because parking, 30 feet across the street where there's no permit is not much of an extra walk into the water area. So I agree with Mark that I think the threshold should be lowered, so we can, but also allow a little more input. Because I think overall it looks like a really good program, and I really think it should be implemented. I just think it needs to be tweaked before we move forward.
And just to be clear, I think that my thought on it is just being able to have the latitude to adjust to each specific situation, change the area. So not have like a hard and fast area designated, which, in number 3 on the primary criteria, specifically says 4 blocks or 2,000 square feet. That may be a good number in some cases, but may not be a good number in others. So, whatever kind of latitude we have to add to that. Again, I think we would certainly have 75% if we just picked the 3 streets that we're discussing right now. But if we do expand that to the other areas, we may not get that support.
Yeah, I would agree, because I think in this case, the 2,000 square feet or 4 blocks is a much larger swath, and that would include less people who would be impacted by this. So I think that number needs to be adjusted. So I don't know. On that note, I'm going to look at the committee on this one for any motions or actions.
Ashley, based on, do you have the information from the previous studies and what they used I think we hit on 75%, being that that was kind of the happy medium based on all of the other cities.
I think all of the other cities in terms of, it depends. We saw figures swinging from 65 to 85%. So 75 was about the middle. We've also seen figures as low as 50%. So I think from my understanding, reviewing my notes from the traffic ad hoc or the permit parking ad hoc committee, was that 75% was established to make sure that enough support was warranted so that people who didn't want permit parking were not adversely impacted by, essentially a simple majority, like a 50+1%. So it definitely varies though. There is no hard and fast rule, and it can be amended. And in terms of this criteria, I think my understanding is the plan was to have an additional permit parking ad hoc committee discuss and then bring it back. That is my understanding.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing too. I'm hearing what I think is reluctant to on the 4 block and the 2,000 square foot criteria, because if, say, the people on 2nd Street East, half a block, 3 houses on both sides to the north, or Donner, half a block, 3 houses on both sides to the north, wanted to do it also, the 4 block criteria can hamper them. Is that what I'm understanding? Because realistically, I think that what they could do is they could petition to join the existing. And realistically, if the problem gets pushed to the north, the people that are right there at the corner are going to be affected most, and it's going to go less as you get away from it, heading towards Chase Street. So realistically, they could just join the existing zone, and instead of it being a 4 block area like we currently have, where we're talking about 2nd, MacArthur Lane to Donner Avenue, and MacArthur Lane Court, then we could actually just push it up 3 or 4 houses up Donner, push it up 3 or 4 houses up 2nd, and just make it grow. Versus having to have that whole, and if that group of people, the 6 affected houses on 2nd, the 6 affected houses on Donner, if 100% of them said, we want to do this, they would just be incorporated into the existing area. Then if 50% said, well, we don't want to do it, and 50% said we do, per the existing criteria, then the extension wouldn't be allowed. Or, and you got to be a little bit careful saying half a block, but you could designate an area there. And if it wasn't a full 4 blocks, it could still be considered, potentially. And here again, creative, case by case. Yeah.
So then could we notate that for, sorry, there's so many numbers here. Which one was that? Oh, number 7. Could that be notated? So 75%, and then if there is pushback from those adjacent streets, then X amount of square footage can be added to that.
I think what might be a good way to approach this, because this is a permit parking program criteria. So it's been brought to the forefront because we have this one traffic hazard reporting form. However, we don't want to shape the permit parking criteria around this one issue. So what we could do is a very simple line item for a variance, kind of like what we do for our tree permit removals, right? If you can request a variance. So if you're impacted by this area, you can request that you be, incorporated into an existing permit parking area near you, as long as you're adjacent. So we could write something like that in, or requesting a variance through the Department of Public Works to evaluate. And I think that might solve the issue and make it a little bit more malleable for our areas that are impacted by, parking occupancy.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, you have to have some consistency. You can't just have 3 houses and the next year 4 houses. We're going to put these signs up. It's pretty much a half block at a time. I'm just pulling that number out. And a appropriately than all the cars that were within that zone. And you could come up with some creative words on the signs too, to further restrict where it's occurring. Because we're going to probably get to a dividing line where people do not want this. And we've actually had that happen here at the city in my term. So I think that thinking along those lines, though, that right now it includes all the houses to the south of MacArthur. That doesn't mean we want to exclude the first, second, third house to the north of MacArthur. They're not part of this process, but being able to easily incorporate another group of neighbors into the plan would have to be case by case, and it would have to be by the specific area and to everyone's discretion, including police department, including traffic safety committee, including input from public works.
Yeah, I think as long as the surrounding neighbors are aware and can voice whatever, that's kind of the big one. And with this being, I feel like we're almost conflating two issues right now, which is the overall parking plan, permit parking plan, and I feel like we're conflating it with specifically MacArthur and Donner and all that stuff. And I think there's some gray, but as long as surrounding neighbors are aware and can voice support or opposition to it, as a committee member, I like this as it stands right now. I think we should have that wiggle room, and we should have the options for variance. And as of right now, since this is the first one, we should also have the option to go, okay, we really need to overhaul this. But as long as we have a good, solid review of it, in 6 months or whatever that might be, that's kind of my stance. I'm going to leave it to the committee for anything further.
My feeling is I like the way this is right now, and I'm ready to take some positive action. One question that we didn't talk about in the ad hoc committee was the hours. Is this going to be, no parking 24/7, or are there hours, that I don't think that was ever discussed.
Yeah, just checking with the chief, it's 24/7.
24/7.
Yeah, and then remember, we talked about there will not be permit parking next to the park on Second Street. Only half of the street will have permit parking. The half on the west side will not, because there's a public park there. And so it's not the full section of all these streets 100%, but it's close. And then one other thing that came up was, I was just talking to the chief about this tonight, but currently these permits are issued for life. And so this is something that we're going to have to work with the police department on, because we don't want to create an administrative burden, but at the same time we want that revenue. So I'm just kidding. Yeah, and Commissioner Branconi, this goes back to your cost versus revenue question, and that's something that we're going to have to look into.
Okay, well, I guess the question is, and Ashley, forgive me because I know you've said this twice already, but right now, are we looking to approve this as a general item to present to the city? And actually, I'm not asking you specifically. We're looking at, correct me if I'm wrong, we're looking at two things right now, whether to adopt this as is and push it forward, as well as, if we do adopt this and move forward, implementing it in the MacArthur Donner second area. And I hate to keep putting you on the spot.
No, that's okay. My understanding is that this is a report out.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no action prescribed by the Traffic Safety Committee at this time. So you're receiving a report out on what the ad hoc committee discussed and then providing your input, which sounds positive. So then we would, my understanding is move forward, have another permit parking ad hoc committee and finalize these
Yeah.
with the input that has been received, because there's been comments about 75%, there's been comments about cost, and then there's also been, the comment from our chief cutting here about, the term of the permit. So there are still a few things to work out. So with the secondary meeting, my vision for this path forward would be to have another meeting. At that meeting, I would have a draft of because this is really just criteria for recommendation. So ideally have a draft of a permit parking program for review, taking into this impact or this feedback, and then being able to present it at the next traffic safety committee for adoption. And between then, we would have, Public Works would have a workshop with PD as well. We could possibly even have PD at the next ad hoc meeting as well. So those are all kind of options to move this forward. But given the fact that there are some questions about some of this criteria, which is, absolutely fair, it's the first time everyone's seeing it, it would, make sense to have a secondary permit ad hoc meeting.
Yeah, I think that sounds exactly right. So that's my thought. Meet again, iron it out, and if we can move it forward, and hopefully with move it forward, and then if we couple it with MacArthur Lane in the next meeting, if we can move it forward, and then suggest we use, and I'm just using MacArthur Lane, that area in general, and move that forward as the pilot area, that would be my suggestion. And I know school just started, but I know the chief and the police department are doing a lot of work on parking in that area. So I think right now we're just asking for a little bit more time. We can iron this out and then hopefully put a program together for the neighbors. That's my takeaway. Okay. Seeing no action, no further comments from the committee, let's move forward with that plan. Thank you to the community. Ashley, thank you very much for everything that you've done, because I know we're going to do the next ad hoc report, and you did a ton of work on that one. So let's close this item on permit parking and move on to traffic calming measures for the ad hoc. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just the whole house.
I know. Okay. So moving on to our traffic calming measures report out. So this traffic calming measure ad hoc committee met on July 26, 2024. Committee members included Chair Lobsinger, Committee Member Newman, Committee Member DeMeno, and city staff in attendance included Cathy Martindale, Mike Berger, Director of Public Works, and myself. The committee reviewed varying traffic calming measures from various traffic calming programs, and the two that stood out considerably were the cities of Cotter and Millbrae. Criteria established going into a traffic calming program or calming handbook that would eventually be adopted by City Council. And the process ideally would include receiving a traffic hazard reporting form that would be evaluated by Public Works against this criteria in the traffic calming program, and then determined whether or not that traffic reporting hazard form met the criteria for advanced traffic calming measures. So ideally, after looking at different programs, there is a recommended levels for traffic calming measures. So level 1 would be something that doesn't require any additional engineering support, such as striping, placing a speed radar trailer, or basic signage. And then the second level would include advanced traffic calming measures, which would include additional traffic engineering, which would include the implementation of traffic circles, speed humps, speed tables, rectangular rapid flashing beacons, curb bulb outs, and pedestrian refuges. And so the committee members evaluated criteria for speed circles, speed bumps, and rectangular rapid flashing beacons. And we're advised to review and discern what kind of criteria or level of detail was preferred in this kind of handbook, because it runs the gamut, whether some are like 10 pages or some are like 70. So how detailed we want it to be, and ideally include areas that were critical, such as schools, churches, parks, that could be evaluated for advanced traffic calming measures as well if they met the eligibility criteria. So ideally, putting together a handbook that we could evaluate traffic hazard reporting forms and then, either say this qualifies for advanced calming traffic measures, or it can be dealt with in other ways, or, it just doesn't meet the criteria for those items. And then a basic outline for the handbook could potentially look like providing an overview for the definition of traffic calming, criteria that would be eligible for traffic calming measures, and definitions of commonly used terms, acronyms. So, for example, RRFBs is thrown around super casually, but what does that mean? The process and the flow chart for the traffic hazard reporting form once it's been received, this would be something like whether or not you want to utilize a petition, or you just reviewing them on a case-by-case basis. And it could look something similar to, reviewing it as it comes, a traffic hazard reporting form comes in, Public Works evaluates against that criteria. If it qualifies, implementing level 1 measures, assuming that those would be addressed. If level 1 measures don't work, moving forward to level 2 measures, which would require additional engineering, and then would also require a consultation with the traffic engineer, police, and fire. And then discussing with the Traffic Safety Committee and eventually making a recommendation on whether or not to input that prescribed traffic calming measure. So whether or not that's an RRFB, a traffic calming circle, speed tables, and then would the fifth and final step would be implementation and follow-up. And so this is our first ad hoc meeting, so I threw an incredible amount of material at our committee members who were very graceful in receiving it. And the next step would be to have another traffic calming ad hoc committee meeting to narrow down the criteria for various traffic calming measures and work towards establishing a program. Because right now, essentially what we walked away with was a skeleton of what it could possibly look like. And staff would work to schedule this before the next traffic safety meeting.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that was really, the research was awesome, and you put this together. It was great. And I went through Cathy's, I went through Mowbray's, and they're not wildly different, but they're very they're unique to their town. So I think that's a good thing moving forward, is to have. I like that we have that skeleton. And I think moving forward, just kind of cherry pick from some of these places, and I think especially since this is Sonoma and we're obviously different from Cathy and Millbrae, start small and hope that we can continue to expand upon it. But otherwise, that was kind of my thought. There was a lot to digest, and there's a lot of good information. We built the skeleton, and we just kind of cherry pick moving forward how we want to build it, and have that at the next meeting.
Looks great. Look forward to seeing what you guys come up with after your next meeting.
All right. So with that, I'll open that up to public comment on traffic calming measures.
Hi, Cedra Nathan. I think this is a really exciting topic. I mean, this is functionally the topic that could be integrated. And there's actually several other commissions that are talking about this exact thing, though it's not using the same words as traffic calming. So I'm on the Climate Commission. We're talking about climate reduction strategies that help by looking at urban infrastructure. We've been recommended from City Council to think about trees and how that can be worked with. That gets into our transportation and networks and how we get people out of cars, and that's a traffic calming strategy, but it's also a greenhouse gas reduction strategy. The Arts Commission is working also on getting people to have pathways that are filled with art, and so they've asked us also to provide comments saying that that's important as well. And so I know you have an ad hoc committee, but it would be just fantastic to have it have a joint meeting, so some of these ideas could be integrated together, and it could be a unified information that goes into traffic calming that gives you more bang for buck, essentially. And so there's the programs in Millbrae that you mentioned in Cathy are fantastic programs. There's also a bunch of research that could be added to what you're looking at from groups like Vibrant Cities, Strong Towns, the Global Designing Cities Initiative. And so you've got a bunch of other folks that could enhance your information and infrastructure, and it could be, it could help set Sonoma apart as some of this information are coming from award-winning programs in cities, and that's functionally what we're trying to do for Sonoma as well, I think. So I just wanted to offer that up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Armando Zimmerman back. Cathy, maybe my memory is not serving me well right now, and that's possible. One of the traffic calming measures that I think has come up, it's either Cathy or Penbro, was traffic circles. And somehow what I read was that I don't know how they arrived at banning a couple of proposed traffic circles. And I think it was Cathy. But since you're using that as a model, if it was Cathy, maybe it'd be a good idea to figure out how that happened. And I'm going back to years ago when I was on the Traffic Safety Committee myself. There was a proposal, actually it was worked up by one of the consulting groups for a traffic circle at the end of Broadway and right at the Horseshoe, and to eliminate those long, shorten the long crossings for pedestrians and make it more, work more smoothly, like supposedly traffic circles or roundabouts are supposed to work. And somehow that was chaotic. I don't remember exactly how the city arrived at that decision, but they did a lot. There was a lot of work done to work up the proposal, and it's probably in one of your manuals. That there was, schematics drawn out and everything else. So I'm just saying, I don't know if that's pertinent to, that particular form of calming measures as you're looking at those things. So thank you.
Again, Tom Conlon, just because Armando brought up Cathy, they've got a ballot measure now to repeal that prohibition on traffic circles. They all recognize, and soon the voters will validate that it was a bad decision to have made several years ago. So, and I just, again, want to heap praise on the committee and the staff. This is great work I see here. And the other thing about Cathy is that I believe they are supportive of the concept of wooners, which are areas that cars are still allowed into, but are very, very slow. I'm not sure if that's one of your plans, but that's something an advanced traffic calming measure to consider. I'm sorry. And then one thing I had also in my mind is that the city of Sonoma did endorse traffic calming as part of the Climate Action Plan back in 2016, and it's something that we've had on the books for quite some time, so it's wonderful to finally see implementation starting to happen. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. All right, I'll send this back to the committee. Any further discussion on this one for the committee?
I just have one comment, if I could, real quick. The lady left a little too soon before I got her name. I apologize. I'm just getting a little tired and I forgot her name. But she brought up a great phrase that she said, greenhouse reduction strategy. I like that term, and I know I kind of had a concern to bring, we're talking about taking away 20 parking spots around the square with the new penal code section. I forgot what it was, but regardless of what it is, the number, we're going to lose the 20 spots. And I had kind of talked about at the ad hoc meeting, maybe getting motorcycle parking around the square and some sort of bicycle parking if we can implement that. We can talk about that another time, but I'd just kind of like to see that. I know the town of Hillsburg has motorcycle parking, and we don't have anything. We're asking everybody to kind of, curb our cars, walking in, driving our bikes. But if we can have something for Vespas and things like that, it'd be really nice to see in the square. Thank you.
It was 4 spots, right, total? 3, okay, it went down to 3. So it's only 3 that we'd be losing on the plaza.
Yeah, originally it was 20 if we didn't do the extended ped refuges that we're going to be talking about in the next item. But it went down to 3 after we did some creative engineering and had the painted pedestrian refuges.
All right. On that note, unless we have anything further, we can close this item out and move on to the Delineators, the Plaza, Midblock. Turn it over to Public Works.
Okay, and then I don't know. This went. Okay, perfect. At the June 27th, 2024 Traffic Safety Committee meeting, we presented an alternative striping design in order to mitigate the loss of parking at the plaza in order to become compliant with AB 413. And essentially that is a rule that states that you can't have parking within 20 feet of a crosswalk. So the plan currently is that the existing parking at midblock crossings will act as a buffer, and then using the placement of delineators will make it clear that that's actually not part of the crosswalk. So you're essentially shifting the entrance of the crosswalk up at the start of where the end of the cars would be parked, and in doing so we would be saving the loss of 15 to 20 parking spots. And so at that meeting, we presented various delineator options to the committee. And so this PowerPoint I'm going to go through is essentially just a review of that. The idea today is to make a determination in terms of what kind of delineator that the Traffic Safety Committee would like to see at these mid-block crossings. So we're going to go over the proposed mid-block crossing of what is currently proposed in terms of the renewed striping plan, the feedback we got at the June 27th Traffic Safety Committee meeting, and then review new options for delineators in terms of railings and wine barrels. So this is an example of one mid-block crossing. They all look very similar. I believe there are 3 mid-block crossings proposed. And so this is kind of the general idea in terms of shifting the entrance of the crosswalk up and then placing delineators at this hatched area, the red hatched paving here, to make it clear that that is not the entrance of the crosswalk. In doing so, we will be compliant with this new law and save a considerable amount of parking. So what we need is, essentially what we want to place there to make it clear that that's not part of the crosswalk. So at the June 27th committee meeting, we presented options for typical traffic delineators and planter boxes and railings. At the committee feedback at the time was to reject typical traffic delineators and planter boxes, and a committee member introduced wine barrels as a possible alternative. So this is a presentation of, or a slide that was presented at the June 27th, 2024 traffic meeting. And these are the railings that were presented. And it was decided that that was an option that would possibly work for these mid-block crossings. So today we have a few additional options for railings to kind of narrow in if you want something a little bit more utilitarian, or if it's something that should be a little bit more designer for the plaza. And then here we also have options for wine barrels. So, and what do we want that to look like? Plain wine barrel. Is there a possibility of maybe adding some, like a brand or logo on there? It could be sponsored by maybe a tasting room on the plaza, or entertaining the idea of a half barrel at that area. And then asking your guys' for feedback. So ideally what would be great to move forward would be for a recommendation from traffic safety that you want to go with railings or wine barrels, and you don't have to hone in a particular design, but you know, a definitive direction on which you would prefer as a delineator at mid-block crossings would be preferred as an action for this meeting.
All right. I already have something in mind, but I'm going to open it up to the committee. And without Mark Domeno here, I know he was a strong advocate for the wine barrels.
The wine barrel guy.
He was the one pushing it.
Right.
But he's not here tonight.
I really like the idea of the wine barrel. The only hesitance I have with that is visibility. So if we talk about, you know, kids potentially being obscured by the wine barrels, the railings, in the examples that we've seen, there's at least some portion of it where you can see through it. So if we did the wine barrel, I would say maybe a half barrel with some sort of a metal component or something, so that it's lower to the ground so it doesn't obscure smaller pedestrians.
And I'm certainly more in favor of the wine barrels, and if we were to incorporate some of the railings, I would think it has to be something that, you know, lends the charm of the plaza and brings out, you know, the uniqueness of Sonoma, rather than something just utilitarian. That would be my, and then you're talking probably something, you know, that's going to be a little bit more costly, but I would like to think about where, you know, what people are going to be experiencing, you know, and it's going to be quite prominent. I mean, there's going to be several of them out there, so it's a pretty significant decision, I think.
Can you clarify again how many, because you just have the image of right over by the cheese factory. So that would be, there's 3 sections, right?
One at Araldi's, one at Old Food City, Sebastiani Theater area, and then one at Cheese Factory. And just so that you know, this is part of a bigger plan to restripe the plaza. And when we get a final configuration of the striping, we're going to make a determination whether we got to get a contractor in there, because it's just too much for our maintenance crews, or we could tackle it with the maintenance crews and it'd take longer. But this also is going to include a couple of different upgrades. One is going to be at the roundabout for cars traveling westbound on Napa Street, because we're having cars pull in to both lanes there. It's a right turn going into City Hall legally that you could do, but what cars are doing is they're pulling up along the side of the car that's going either straight or left, and they're going straight to the right turn lane. And that's illegal, and we're going to put some striping in there to deter that. And there's a couple other upgrades that we're making at the corners to increase pedestrian visibility coming out of the crosswalks, or coming off the round corner onto the crosswalk. So it's part of a bigger program. And if we haven't already started, we'll be starting the red striping upgrades this month. And then this will be one of the last things that we do, just because we're trying to hone in on the vertical delineation.
I like the idea of a half wine barrel. Maybe something potted, but going back to your comment, I remember last meeting was those can be a trash collector. I do think, though, that those specific areas have a lot of the new trash cans very close by. But if we did have something potted, maybe something more bushy, so it's not, you know, flowers or something where people are easily just throwing it in the dirt, in the soil. So that's my 2 cents.
I just have a quick question. Just let's take the this drawing that's in front of the cheese factory. The red area, if it were rails, would it be a triangle of rails, if that makes sense? Would they be connected, or is it just one rail coming out where the 2 green stripes are?
One way to do this would be to have a rail going out where the green stripes are. Another way to do it, if you look at the top one that's in front of Cheese Factory, it's got something resembling a 60-degree angle on one side. Mm-hmm. And what you could do is you could move 1 foot in from the outer stripe far enough that a car isn't going to hit it easily. Maybe that number's 2 feet, but then have a double section of railing that basically, and none of this has been, we're still trying to get a perimeter stripe zone. As soon as we get that, and we could say, okay, it's going to be railings, we could work with the traffic engineer on the best place to put them. But it could be a single section of rail, parallel to traffic at the outer limit that basically constrained people. There's a lot of different options here. Because what you want to do is you want to, and here again, I could talk to the traffic engineer about this, but you want to have a delineation that ends the pedestrian refuge and starts the crosswalk, and you want to be able to usher the people to the proper spot. So I'm thinking that a funnel type ushering would be appropriate, but if you picked a rail section similar to any of the alternatives that we have chosen here, basically these things can come in like 6 foot, 10 foot sections, and you could put any angle on it that you choose. And it's not that it's going to be protecting people from cars, it's just differentiating that area and ushering the people into the crosswalk.
Yeah, I mean, while I would agree that wine barrels are aesthetically maybe a little bit more pleasing and very much more Sonoma, what I see are trash collectors, potential vandalism, people knocking them over, and maybe I'm going too much into cop mode, but if they're not fixed to the ground, they can be messed with. I mean, unless they're anchored there, I just see, people coming out of Steiner's, people coming out of Swiss, people coming whatever, and it just, so that's part of the reason I ask if it's like, I agree, funnel, if it was rails, funnel, we want a funneling point. We don't want to just put 2 rails up pointing to the street. That doesn't seem it seems counterintuitive, but if it was more of a, corral, kind of to funnel people, and it's a triangle or whatever it is, you put a wine barrel in the middle to make it more decorative. But in terms of having to replace them, having to deal with misdemeanors committed against them, I would lean much more heavier rail. And then in terms of cost, the rails are going to go in once for the most part, unless a car runs into it. But the barrels, if cars run into that, you're going to run into the same issues, and there's going to be wear and tear on the barrels as well. They're going to rot because they're made out of wood, so they're going to have to be replaced every so often. And that doesn't include the times they could potentially be, we'll just say, damaged. So, and the rail does provide an extra little layer of safety for people coming out into the street crossing. It allows, the vision, people can see through them, so to speak. A child could see through it, so to speak, and have that layer of protection. So I fall more into the rail category. That's where I am. Jay?
Can I piggyback to you?
Absolutely.
I kind of like the one in the middle, the picture in the middle, because it looks like it's guiding people a certain direction. But instead of like what Adam is saying, all the negatives on the wine barrels, what if we had some cutouts instead of like the bicycle that's in the middle one? Just do like some grapevines or something. You know, that kind of has the theme of Sonoma and the square. And we don't have to worry about the barrels collecting garbage and all the issues you just mentioned. One thought.
So sticking with the wine barrel theme, looking at the first picture, you could even use that frame, that basic structure, and have wine barrels in the middle there, or two of them, and they'd be sort of suspended, like this is suspended. You've got the section in the middle that's being suspended between the frame, and that would be very pleasing, I think, and it would be less likely to be looked upon as a receptacle. It's just going to be there, you know, it's going to be hanging there, solid. You know, just again for adding some artistic element.
Yeah, I think there are, exactly to your point, there are ways to make them uniquely Sonoma. So yeah, I think we've all kind of said our piece. Have we opened up? Well, we need to open up to public comment.
All right, you really are going to chase me out now. So I wasn't going to speak on this topic, but Cedra asked me to, and so I'll just mention her comment, which is that the folks on the Fine Arts Commission might want to have some input into this decision. I think they have a number of ideas, according to her, that might be of relevance to this. I'm pretty utilitarian, so that's when I look at this, I think we want to be sure we're using that space efficiently. And I know there was talk about Vespa parking. There's talk. I know when I want to go to a business on the plaza, I want to get my bicycle as close as I can. And most of the bike parking on the plaza right now is on the inside of the plaza, not on the vendor side, not on the retail side. And so if there might be a way to, you know, utilize some of that space that would otherwise be lost to a wine barrel as a single parking space for a bike that would be adjacent perhaps to that rail. I mean, frankly, if that rail was there, I'm going to stick my bike there and you're going to have to ticket me. And I might do it a couple of times, right? Because I'm trying to get my bike as close to the front door of the Sebastiani or wherever I'm going. So now the other thing is and the other comment about wine barrels, talking with Tim Zahner, he's been designing some of the programs to draw people to Sonoma, and they're downplaying the wine iconography, the design stuff, because younger people who don't know about Sonoma are not necessarily resonating that much with the whole wine thing these days. So we should be mindful of not doubling down, tripling down on what is a relatively recent historical draw to our town. You know, Sonoma has a lot of history and it's been around for a long time. And wine's not the only thing we do here. And we might want to, I'm just encouraging not over wine design. Again, I'm not a design expert, so discount everything I just said.
Armando Zimmerman again, dovetailing on Mr. Lobsinger's concerns about vandalism being bumped into. Anything, in my experience, anything that's wooden, the main thing will happen is sun, wind, rain, and I'm just thinking about, I don't know how many of these wooden barrels, assuming they're going to be wooden, there's going to be a maintenance issue. If you want to have people become part of it and, you know, sponsor one, then you're going to have another issue, which is, you know, what is their sponsorship part of the wine barrel, et cetera, et cetera? Is it going to be, you know, a frame, lettering, this and that? Anyway, that, you know, I can see a real maintenance issue, even if no one messes with them in any other way. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, send it back to the committee. I think we need to make a recommendation.
Just a couple quick things on some of the stuff that was brought up. Tom brought up attaching bikes to the railings. That hadn't even crossed my mind, which in my mind is a negative to this. You know, we should put a bike rack there or something in some of these spaces, but having people attach bikes directly to the railings and things, in my mind, is a negative. And then as far as the wine barrel concept, I think that maybe we try to find something manufactured that could be filled, you know, and heavy, and then maybe like some heavy gauge chain to be the like delineator to the next barrel. And then in my mind, the half barrels would be upside down with some sort of a post sticking out of them where that chain would then land, you know, something like that. I wasn't thinking anything that is going to be an open half barrel or anything like that. So that might mitigate some of the concerns with them being easily toppled or vandalized.
I just want to add in my thoughts because I'm a big advocate of the wine barrel. So for a cost factor, they're probably significantly less expensive than installing railing. When you think about labor, metal, concrete, they're smaller. So when they're cut in half, they're significantly smaller than what you see on this slide for railing. And yes, there would be maintenance, but I can't imagine that it would be that much. So I think from a cost perspective, and also, you know, keeping in mind just the preservation of the plaza and the beauty of the plaza and the history, I just feel like having potted half wine barrels just really visually appeals to our tourism and our community.
So just to put a bow on this, just for our purposes as a committee, we're just going to say, vote on whether it's just a broad wine barrel suggestion or a broad railing suggestion. That's kind of what I'm hearing. I mean, I know we have a lot of ideas, but I think we're just advancing one or the other.
Yeah, this is going to go through, it's anything on the plaza is going to go through a significantly larger approval process. So, you know, kind of going with a general concept and then being able to carry that concept through the approval process is kind of where we're going with this.
So if there's other recommendations or other ideas that come back, then you would bring it back to a following meeting, or no?
We haven't worked out what exactly the back and forth is going to be. If you did want to be kept updated, we could definitely make that like a small staff updates section.
Yeah. How? I was to say, yeah. I mean, an update would be great, but I mean, we're not the end. You know, we're not the end result. I'm like the Arts Commission should be involved. You know, there should be other people involved in this. I mean, I'm not saying they should. They will be. So this, I think this is just our suggestion, but which will be a suggestion among many.
Should we consider an ad hoc for the, you know, I don't want to do death by committee or anything, but an ad hoc with members from those other committees, and then it can be a collaborative effort between, you know, then, you know, we're kind of trying to go to bat for the arts and the, you know, kind of look of things and whatnot, when really, you know, the goal is for us to look at the safety side of things. Maybe if we get players from each of the involved committees or commissions to do like a joint ad hoc, would there be any benefit to that?
Yeah, there would, and there's already been talk about other committees weighing in on this. So I think that we can take, it would be nice to get a recommendation in terms of what the Traffic Safety Committee thought was the number one choice, railings or wine barrels, because it seems like that's the two that we're heading for, the two favorites. And then that's something for us to work on and to take to the next committee to have a discussion with a bigger group and see what the next steps would be.
Yeah, I think because that's kind of, I know that Tom and Cedra have been kind of touching on this all night, which is, getting our committees together, for various reasons, which I'm fully on board with. So I think that's a good thing. So I think the idea right now is let's put either railings or wine barrels forward with the thought in mind of down the road in terms of various other projects with the city, working with other committees and other members to, kind of provide feedback. So
I'm going to motion that
Mark, do we have a motion?
Yes. I'm going to motion that we recommend wine barrels be the method that we take care of these pedestrian zones with.
I second that motion.
Vice Chair Branconi,
Aye.
Committee Member Cotter,
Aye.
Committee Member Newman,
Nay.
Committee Member Wyrick,
Aye.
Chair Lobsinger.
Nay.
Okay, so the the motion passes 3-2-2. We have 2 absent.
All right, we're almost to the finish line. Let's move this to the last item on the agenda, the review of the 20-mile-an-hour speed zone criteria.
So this agenda item summary is essentially to address how we could possibly lower the speed limit to 20 miles per hour in and around the city plaza. Per our city traffic engineer, we have 2 approaches. So the first one is to qualify the plaza as a business activity. Oh, sorry, Kathy. I just started going. That we classify the plaza as a business activity district, and the local authority can then declare a prima facie speed limit of either 25 or 20 miles per hour in and around the surrounding area. This does cite term highway, but per the California Vehicle Code, highway also qualifies as a street, so I just wanted to make sure because that language is in there. And it does have qualifying criteria within the business activity district to qualify for this 25 or 20 mile an hour prima facie speed limit. So because the current speed limit in and around the plaza is 25, we would be reducing it to 20 miles an hour. And that includes no less than 50% of the contiguous property. Fronting the highway consists of retail or dining commercial uses, including outdoor dining that openly directs onto sidewalks. Parking, including parallel, diagonal, or perpendicular spaces, are located alongside the highway. Traffic control signals or stop signs regulating traffic flow on the highway are located at intervals of no more than 600 feet. There are marked crosswalks present that are not controlled by traffic control devices. So these are qualifiers that need to be present in order for this to work within and around the business activity district. And this would also require the plaza to be formally designated as a business district, which at this time I'm not sure if it is or isn't. And then the second option would be to accomplish this through engineering and traffic surveys. And the areas that are proposed are West Spain Street from 2nd Street West to 2nd Street East, First Street West from Norbon Road to Maple Street, Second Street West from West Main Street to Perkins Street, First Street East to Patton Street, and West Napa Street from Broadway to Second Street East. And we do have a map of the proposed speed zones that kind of details where exactly we want these 20-mile-an-hour, or where what the proposed 20-mile-an-hour speed reduction is. And so those are our options for accomplishing that.
So the question about whether it's a business district, I know we talked about this a while ago, and it was at the city meeting. Weren't we trying to come up with our long-term plan for the downtown area? Is this part of that vision of that, like that 5-year plan of making it historical, kind of like basically what Napa did? Is this part of that, or is this?
No.
Is this part of the law that we're able to?
This is part of the law. Okay. And speaking with community development, there is a district in town, and I'm researching the limits and the qualifiers for setting it. And I haven't got anything done on that yet. We will look into that. It could be somewhat consistent with the map that's on the screen. And these numbers were, or the locations of the 20-mile-an-hour zones were brought up with discussion with the traffic engineer and looking at the criteria that Ashley talked about. So this is a separate item that a lot of municipalities in the area are pursuing. Napa pursued it, like you correctly said a second ago. Santa Rosa is pursuing this, and other agencies around are going to be doing it also, if they haven't already. But those two, I know for sure. And we've talked about this at the last couple of meetings and brought this up. And this has come up at an ad hoc or two, just in general conversation about being able to do this and coming up with the mechanism for doing it, which are detailed here in items 1 and 2. And it's not just at the downtown district, it's also at entry and exit points of pedestrians, like bike trails. And we're looking, a couple of the other areas we're looking into to potentially do something like this are 5th Street at the bike trail crossing, Prestwood, and Sasserini. And so those are just 3 other areas that we're looking at as we get more information on this and work with the traffic engineer to develop criteria and come up with areas where we think it would benefit pedestrians and at the same time not really encumber people where it isn't warranted that people should be slowing down. And one of the reasons that we're working on this is Prestwood School, because it's human nature, if the speed limit's 25, that you drive between 25 and 30, not that you drive between 20 and 25. And so one of the potential benefits of doing this would be just to get people in the mindset that the speed limit's 20. So drive between 20 and 25 and you won't get a ticket, right? Chief, is that an official? No, but just getting people to change their mindset. And I mean, if you look at these streets here, 2/3 of half of them, if you're driving over 20 miles an hour, you're crazy. Because there's just this is very impacted downtown, cars, people, kids, strollers, bikes. And so definitely that circle around the plaza, you wouldn't drive 20 around that. But then as you go out and as you come in, put you in a mindset of you're entering the downtown district and we just want to slow it down.
Mike, with that in mind, I heard the parameters about it. There's certain stipulations of where it can be. For Spain Street, does it have to stop at 2nd, or with the whole bike and ped stuff in mind, could we bump that out to 3rd at the Vallejo's home driveway? with the amount of people that are peeling off the bike path or accessing that bike path from the Vallejo's home driveway.
Yeah, and there are, I'm not totally up on the rules on this, and it's possible GHD could weigh in on this, but basically there are two ways of getting this done. One of them is speed surveys. And so that's an option almost, and I'm not sure if irregardless, but it's an option. So not just, this is kind of, I think this 20 mile an hour, these 20 mile an hour zones were based off applying the criteria to being able to call this a downtown district. But then there's also the speed limit option, which you could do on any street or the streets the traffic engineer says it applies on. Yeah.
Matt?
Yeah, you're correct, Mike. So the 20 mile per hour zones here are identified based on the criteria for business improvement district. So that section of Spain doesn't meet that definition. That's why it's not shown. But that doesn't mean it might not. There are other options with this law. You know, there's safety corridors. There's other things that we could look at where there could be some way of extending it. And I haven't memorized it, so unfortunately I can't tell you everything that entails that. But there are other options. As Mike laid out, engineering and traffic surveys usually set the speed limit for prima facie speeds. Not likely to necessarily be able to set it much lower than 25, but the safety corridor option might be something to look into.
I have one quick question. I know this is running long. Could this be extended to Patton and, is that 2nd Street East? No, 1st Street. 1st Street East.
Like by Sunshine School?
Mm-hmm.
It's possible, and we could look into that.
The reason why I'm asking is just because there's a lot of businesses over in that area as well. And parking over by Maya and that street on 1st Street East is pretty busy. There's speeding over that way too, so just curious.
This might be more of a question for Matt, but in terms of the safety areas, I'm guessing it extends to Sasser, Indian, Prestwood because those might be considered safety areas. So the first question is, would Sunshine qualify? If it's not considered part of the bid, would it qualify as being a school or safety area right there on Patton Street?
Well, at schools, you can always lower the speed. So there's a school speed. I think all schools have posted speeds that are lower during school hours, so that should be a given.
Okay.
Again, I'd have to look at the criteria. I'm not totally sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just was curious.
Yep.
Anything else from the committee? I will open up to public comment.
Armando Zimmerman again. I live between 2nd West on Spain Street, 2nd West and 3rd West. We, in our first request to Public Works, we tried to describe the interconnectivity, and I think a previous presenter here talked about bike paths coming from 3rd Street West again toward Vallejo. One of the primary entrances to that bike path is the Vallejo driveway. And there's the St. Francis School, there's the preschool, there's the church, there's 2 churches, and so it's quite a dynamic area. And my experience anecdotally living there, I don't know, 12, 14 years, is that those drivers that would when they leave the plaza, they're just picking up speed so that when they go by 2nd Street, that's where they begin to basically go pretty quickly, which affects then what we're talking about in terms of trying to slow, the intersection of 3rd and Vallejo. That's why we're proposing a small traffic circle, because you really need some kind of a barrier, some kind of a change in the road, not just signs and things like that, which I'm not against signs. But we've also heard, I think from Chief Cutting and other police chiefs prior to him, that enforcement is not something that we can really depend on. So we need mitigations that, I'm not against enforcement either, or traffic education by the police department if that can be done. But basically, we need physical mitigations. And so I'm all for lowering the speed limit to 20 in front of my house, and that would get us to the Vallejo driveway. That would help with the access to the bike path. That's et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just trying to express anecdotal information. After the Tuesday markets, often way after most people who are walking to their cars or walking period and whatever, you've got some people zooming out of that, zooming out of the area of the plaza. And I would say every single day there are what I call speed displays on Spain Street, in and around the auto parts place, on Napa Street, whatever. There are a lot of speed displays, motorcycles.
Mr. Zimmerman, we'll have to wrap it up.
Anyway, the point is, I wish that, that all that could be considered also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll put it back to the committee for any further discussion or recommendations.
Can we recommend moving this forward?
The point of this agenda item was to get your guys' feedback on lowering the speed limit to 20 miles an hour, and if you'd be interested in moving it forward.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll motion to move it forward. I'm in favor. I motion to move the recommended 20-mile-an-hour zones forward.
Do you want us to have an official action on this right now, or if there was some that we're trying to figure out if they might be included, would that be something you'd want to add to the motion? And then I see that there's a need for a crosswalk or a stop sign somewhere for that stretch of First Street West between Napa and Maple.
So I think we really don't even need a motion to move forward. We just want to get your guys' feedback in terms of lowering the speed limit to 20 miles an hour. And the feedback without the motion would be enough.
Which a lot of that we've already received. It seems like it's been pretty warmly received, but any other comments?
Yeah, if there's the possibility of adding that section of Spain between 2nd and 3rd, and then Patton between Broadway and Austin at minimum, those would be my things. And then the only thought I had on the crosswalk or stop sign, I don't know if you guys have a plan in play there, but over by McDonald Street, there's a pedestrian walkway that goes between 2nd and 1st, so that might be a good spot for a crosswalk.
Okay. Any other feedback from the committee? Okay, we can close this item out. All right. Do we have any members' reports or comments? Any general comments or reports from committee members?
I know everyone wants to get out of here. Quick question for Chief Cutting. I saw the flashing stop sign went in at 5th and MacArthur. You, at the last meeting we talked about you having somebody go work that stop sign before and after results.
I did it, the before survey, pretty crude. Just it counted cars, all cars north and southbound, and then which ones would have violated enough to have a traffic enforcement stop on them. So it was my subjective testing, and I did it 3 separate times, 2 separate days. Traffic was as high as 250 cars during that time and as low as 140, I think, was the lowest. And it was almost consistent, 17.7, 17.9, 18.1, and then somewhere around in there. So 17 point on the high end all the way to the low 18% of the people that hit north and south only that violated the stop sign law prior to the installation. So I actually made a note to go probably test it again next week. We wanted to give it a few weeks to be in place before we went and retested. But it doesn't seem to be affected by east-west traffic at all, and it wasn't affected by the total quantity of traffic passing north-south for the violations to occur. Same percentage, no matter how much traffic, is what we found.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for all of your hard work on everything. It doesn't go unnoticed.
Yeah, before we adjourn, that's actually the last thing. Chief, do you have anything further that you need to report out, you'd like to report out on?
I can just let you guys know, we have two new traffic safety officers that are working. One's on a motor full-time. He's on Sunday through Wednesday. And then the other one is in a patrol car for now until he gets motor qualified, then he'll be on the motor as well. So we've increased our traffic stops like 220% right now. Of those, we're doing more written warnings right now than actual fine citations. We're hoping to kind of get the word out that we're actually doing enforcement before we start really hitting people with it too hard. So there's been a big increase in that. We'll see in a couple weeks what the effects of it are. So that's it.
I think the only thing I would add to that, Chief, is I wish there were more people here to hear that. So maybe we think about having the Chief speak a little earlier, because I think that's great feedback that everybody should hear.
Yeah, and we are going to be doing a big Facebook push. Our traffic safety guys are both experts. They came to the sheriff's office from Roanoke Park. Both of them were motors there, so bringing them over to us. They already have all the traffic experience, and so we're going to try to push some of that traffic knowledge out. They're both younger in their careers, so they're a little bit more eager to do that role. So, and it is a part-time in addition to responding for calls for service. So, but we've been able to, with our community resource officer, assign that person to do more patrol time so that they can focus on traffic. So it's been pretty successful so far, and we're trying to get the word out.
That's awesome. Thank you. On that note, before I adjourn, everybody, thank you, everybody, but I'm going to specifically point out, Ashley, thank you so much. I know you put a lot of work in since you've come here, and it's been extremely helpful. So special thank you to Ashley and everybody else. And with that, meeting is adjourned. President.